Maya Richardson sat in her corner office on the 23rd floor looking out at the city skyline. Her reflection in the glass window showed a woman who had achieved everything she had dreamed of as a young girl growing up in a small apartment with her single mother. At 38 years old, Maya was the owner and CEO of Richardson Properties, one of the most successful real estate companies in the entire city. The walls of her office were covered with awards and certificates. Business magazines had featured her story multiple times, calling her an inspiration to young entrepreneurs everywhere. Maya had started with nothing 15 years ago. When she bought her first small property with money she had saved from working 3 jobs. Now her company managed over 500 luxury apartments, handled million-dollar commercial deals, and employed more than 50 people. But today Maya felt troubled. She held a thick folder in her hands, filled with customer complaints that had been piling up over the past 6 months. The complaints painted a disturbing picture of her company that she could hardly believe. Customers wrote angry letters about being treated rudely by her staff. Some said agents hung up on them during phone calls. Others complained that employees acted like they were doing customers a favor just by showing them properties. Maya read through complaint after complaint. Mrs. Johnson wrote that an agent told her she probably could not afford the apartment she wanted to see before even asking about her budget. Mr. Davis complained that he waited 40 minutes for an appointment only to have the agent show up and spend just 10 minutes with him. A young couple wrote that they felt unwelcome the moment they walked into the office and that staff members stared at them like they did not belong there. These complaints confused Maya deeply. She had worked so hard to build a company based on respect and professionalism. When she hired managers 5 years ago, she had trusted them to maintain the high standards she had always demanded. Maya spent most of her time now focusing on expanding the business and finding new investment opportunities. She relied on her managers to handle the day-to-day operations and ensure that customers received excellent service. Maya had built her success on treating every customer with dignity regardless of their background or how much money they had. She remembered her own struggles when she was starting out and how some real estate agents had treated her poorly because she was young and black and did not have much money. She had promised herself that her company would be different, that everyone who walked through her doors would be treated with respect and kindness. The complaints suggested that her employees were doing exactly what she had experienced and hated so much. Maya felt sick thinking that her company might be crushing other people's dreams, the way hers had almost been crushed years ago. She thought about all the families who might have been denied good housing because of her staff's behavior. She thought about small business owners who might have given up on their dreams after being treated badly by her agents. Maya stood up and walked to her window again. She could see people walking on the streets below going about their daily lives. Some of them might have been her customers or potential customers. She wondered how many of them had been treated poorly by her company. The thought made her feel ashamed and angry at the same time. She had trusted her managers completely. They gave her monthly reports that always showed everything was going well. They told her that customer satisfaction was high and that the team was performing excellently. But these complaints told a completely different story. Maya realized that she had been living in a bubble protected from the reality of what was happening in her own company. Maya made a decision that would change everything. She needed to know the truth, not from reports or meetings, but from experiencing what her customers experienced. She needed to see with her own eyes how her staff really treated people when they thought no one important was watching. Maya decided to go undercover in her own company to discover what was really happening and to find out if her life's work had become something she never intended it to be. Maya spent the next 3 weeks planning the most important mission of her business career. She knew that going undercover in her own company would be risky and complicated, but she had to know the truth. Every night after work she stayed in her office researching and preparing for what she was about to do. The first challenge was changing her appearance completely. Maya was well known in the real estate industry, and her photo had appeared in newspapers and magazines many times. Her employees had seen her at company meetings and events, so she needed a disguise that would make her completely unrecognizable. Maya went to a costume shop downtown and bought a shoulder-length brown wig that looked nothing like her natural black hair. She practiced putting it on and styling it until it looked natural and believable. Maya also bought completely different clothes from what she normally wore. Instead of her usual expensive business suits and designer shoes, she purchased simple jeans, discount store sweaters, and worn-looking sneakers. She bought a cheap purse from a thrift store and some basic jewelry that looked nothing like the elegant pieces she usually wore. When Maya looked at herself in the mirror wearing her disguise, she was amazed at how different she appeared. But changing her appearance was only part of the plan. Maya also had to change the way she spoke and acted. She spent hours practicing in front of her bedroom mirror, speaking in a softer, quieter voice. She practiced walking differently with less confidence and more hesitation. Maya studied how to act like someone who was nervous about money and unsure about making big decisions like renting an apartment. Maya created a complete fake identity for herself. She decided to become Maria Santos, a single mother who worked as a teacher at an elementary school. Maya made up a story about having a 7-year-old daughter and needing to find an affordable apartment in a good school district. She memorized details about Maria's life, including where she worked, what her salary was, and why she was looking for a new place to live. To make her disguise even more believable, Maya borrowed her friend Lisa's old car. Lisa had a 10-year-old sedan that looked completely different from Maya's luxury vehicle. Maya practiced driving the car and got comfortable with how it felt. She even put a child's car seat in the back and some toys on the floor to make it look like a single mother's car. Maya created fake references and employment documents for Maria Santos. She asked her friend who worked at a different school to pretend to be Maria's supervisor if anyone called to verify her employment. Maya opened a new bank account under her fake name and put in just enough money to look like a teacher's savings account. She made sure every detail of Maria's life would hold up if anyone investigated. The most difficult part of the plan was calling her own company to make appointments. Maya felt strange dialing the number she knew so well and hearing her own receptionist answer the phone. She spoke in Maria's soft voice and explained that she was looking for a 2-bedroom apartment for herself and her daughter. The receptionist's tone was already dismissive and impatient. Maya had to wait on hold for several minutes before the receptionist grudgingly agreed to set up some appointments. Maya scheduled meetings with different agents throughout the week. She made appointments to see apartments in various price ranges and also scheduled time to visit the commercial division to ask about small office spaces. Maya wanted to test every department of her company to see how they treated regular customers. As Maya prepared for her first day as Maria Santos, she felt nervous and excited at the same time. She hoped that the complaints she had received were just from a few unhappy customers and that most of her staff were professional and kind. But deep in her heart, Maya was worried about what she might discover. She knew that this undercover mission could change everything about her business and her life. Maya woke up early on Monday morning feeling both nervous and determined. She put on her Maria Santos disguise, carefully checking every detail in the mirror. The brown wig looked natural, and her simple clothes made her appear like any ordinary working mother. Maya took a deep breath and drove her borrowed car to her own office building where she had worked for over 10 years. Walking through the front entrance as Maria felt incredibly strange. Maya had walked through these same doors thousands of times as the owner and CEO, but now she was just another customer. The first thing she noticed was how different the lobby looked from a customer's perspective. The waiting area was messier than she had ever realized, with old magazines scattered on tables and empty coffee cups left behind by previous visitors. Maya approached the reception desk where Jennifer worked. Jennifer was someone Maya had hired 2 years ago and had always seemed professional during company meetings. But now Jennifer barely looked up when Maya announced that she had an appointment. Instead, Jennifer continued talking on her personal phone call, laughing loudly about weekend plans while Maya stood waiting patiently. After 5 long minutes, Jennifer finally ended her call and looked at Maya with obvious annoyance. She asked Maya's name in a bored tone and then made her wait even longer while she slowly searched through the appointment book. When Maya politely asked if she could use the restroom, Jennifer rolled her eyes and pointed down the hallway without saying a word. Maya felt hurt and embarrassed by the rude treatment, But she knew she had to continue with her mission. Maya's first agent was supposed to meet her at 10 o'clock, but she did not arrive until 10:20. The agent was Sarah Thompson, someone Maya had considered one of her better employees. When Sarah finally appeared, she looked Maya up and down with obvious judgment, taking in her simple clothes and modest appearance. Sarah's first words were not an apology for being late, but rather a comment about Maya needing something cheap. Sarah led Maya to see apartments, but her attitude was dismissive and unprofessional throughout the entire tour. She walked quickly ahead of Maya without explaining anything about the properties or neighborhoods. When Maya asked questions about school districts and safety, Sarah gave short, unhelpful answers and kept checking her phone messages. Maya realized that Sarah was showing her only the worst properties in their inventory, places that were overpriced for their poor condition and location. The apartments Sarah showed Maya were nothing like what she had expected. The first apartment had broken fixtures and stains on the carpet, but Sarah presented it as if Maya should feel grateful to see it. The second apartment was in a building with obvious maintenance problems, but Sarah acted like Maya was being too picky when she asked about repairs. Maya knew that these same agents showed much better properties to other customers because she had seen the photos and descriptions in their marketing materials. During the tour, Maya watched Sarah's behavior carefully. Sarah spent most of her time looking at her phone instead of focusing on Maya's needs and questions. She made assumptions about what Maya could afford without ever asking about her budget or financial situation. When Maya mentioned that she worked as a teacher, Sarah's attitude became even more condescending, as if teachers did not deserve nice housing options. The most shocking moment came when Maya saw Sarah show a young white couple around the same building. Sarah's entire personality changed as she became warm and helpful, explaining every detail about amenities and neighborhood benefits. She spent twice as much time with them and showed them apartments that she had told Maya were not available. Maya watched in disbelief as her own employee treated customers completely differently based on their appearance and perceived social status. Maya excused herself to the bathroom, where she had to take several deep breaths to control her emotions. She felt angry and heartbroken seeing how her own company was treating people. This was exactly the kind of discrimination she had experienced years ago and had promised never to allow in her business. Maya realized that her first day undercover had already revealed serious problems that went far deeper than she had imagined. Maya returned to her company the next day as Maria Santos, but this time she made one small change to her appearance. She carried a designer purse that she had found at a thrift store and wore slightly nicer clothes, though still nothing like her usual expensive outfits. Maya wanted to test whether her staff treated customers differently based on how wealthy they appeared to be. The difference in treatment was immediate and shocking. The same receptionist, Jennifer, who had ignored Maya the day before, was suddenly polite and attentive. Jennifer smiled warmly and offered Maya coffee while she waited for her appointment. She even apologized for any inconvenience and asked if Maya needed anything else to be comfortable. Maya could hardly believe this was the same person who had been so rude just 24 hours earlier. Maya's agent for the day was Michael Rodriguez, someone she had hired 3 years ago and had always trusted completely. Michael greeted Maya with a friendly handshake and professional demeanor that was completely different from Sarah's behavior the previous day. He showed Maya to his office and offered her a seat in a comfortable chair while he gathered information about what she was looking for. Michael began showing Maya much better properties than what Sarah had shown her. These apartments were clean, well-maintained, and in desirable neighborhoods. Michael explained the features of each building and answered Maya's questions with patience and knowledge. For the first 30 minutes, Maya felt relief, thinking that maybe Sarah had just been having a bad day and that most of her employees were professional after all. But then Maya mentioned that she was a single mother working as an elementary school teacher. The moment those words left her mouth, Michael's entire attitude changed dramatically. His friendly smile faded, and he began speaking to Maya in a completely different tone. He suddenly seemed uncomfortable and started looking at his watch, as if he wanted the appointment to end quickly. Michael immediately began steering Maya away from the nicer apartments he had been showing her. He told her that these properties were probably out of her price range without even asking what her budget was. When Maya said she could afford the rent, Michael looked skeptical and suggested that she might want to consider something more modest for a teacher's salary. Maya felt humiliated by his assumptions and condescending attitude. The situation became even worse when Maya watched Michael interact with other customers. A white couple entered the office while Maya was there, and Michael's personality completely transformed back to being warm and helpful. He spent over an hour with them, showing them the exact same apartments he had told Maya were too expensive. Maya listened as Michael explained every detail about the building's amenities, parking options, and neighborhood schools. Michael gave the white couple printed information packets and his business card, encouraging them to call him anytime with questions. He offered to show them additional properties the next day, and even suggested they look at some commercial spaces if they were interested in starting a business. Maya realized that Michael was giving them the kind of service she had expected all customers to receive, but that he had decided Maya did not deserve the same treatment. Maya decided to test the situation even further by asking Michael about the commercial property she had seen advertised. She explained that she was thinking about starting a tutoring business and wondered about renting a small office space. Michael looked surprised and uncomfortable, as if the idea of a teacher starting a business was completely unreasonable. Michael told Maya that commercial properties were very expensive and complicated, requiring extensive paperwork and financial documentation. He suggested that she should probably focus on finding an apartment first and maybe think about a business later when she was more established. Maya knew that Michael regularly helped other clients with commercial properties and that his discouraging attitude was based on his assumptions about her capabilities and financial situation. As Maya left the office that day, she felt devastated by what she had discovered. Her own employees were making judgments about customers based on their race, occupation, and perceived wealth. They were denying equal service to people who deserved the same respect and opportunities as everyone else. Maya sat in her borrowed car in the parking lot, feeling overwhelmed by anger and sadness. She thought about all the customers who had been treated poorly by her staff and all the opportunities that had been denied to people because of prejudice and discrimination. Maya knew that she had to continue her investigation to understand the full extent of the problem before she could figure out how to fix it. Maya decided to test her commercial real estate division by posing as someone interested in renting office space for a small business. She called the office as Maria Santos and spoke with David Kim, who handled commercial properties. David was someone Maya had personally recruited from another company 2 years ago because of his excellent reputation and professional background. On the phone, David seemed enthusiastic and helpful when Maya explained that she was starting a tutoring company and needed a modest office space. He asked good questions about her business needs and scheduled an appointment for the next morning. David's phone manner was so professional that Maya felt hopeful that maybe the problems she had discovered were limited to the residential division. But when Maya arrived at the office the next day, David's attitude changed completely the moment he saw her. She watched his facial expression shift from welcoming to disappointed as he looked at her simple clothes and modest appearance. David asked Maya to wait in the lobby while he finished some important paperwork, but Maya could see through the glass door that he was just sitting at his desk playing on his computer. After 30 minutes, David finally came to get Maya, but his enthusiasm from the phone call had completely disappeared. He seemed annoyed and rushed as he led her to a small meeting room. David barely made eye contact with Maya and kept looking at his watch as if he had somewhere more important to be. Maya felt uncomfortable and unwelcome in her own building. David began showing Maya office spaces, but only the worst ones in their inventory. He took her to basement offices with no windows and spaces that clearly had maintenance problems. Maya knew that these same offices were being marketed to other clients as unique opportunities with character and charm. But David presented them to Maya as if she should be grateful for anything she could get. Throughout the tour, David talked down to Maya, explaining basic business concepts as if she was completely ignorant about running a company. He asked her repeatedly if she was sure she could handle the responsibility of renting commercial space and suggested that maybe she should start her tutoring business from home instead. Maya felt insulted by his condescending attitude and assumptions about her capabilities. The most shocking moment came when David showed Maya an office space that she knew rented for $1,500 per month. But David told Maya that this particular space would cost her $2,200 per month because it was in high demand. Maya realized that David was trying to overcharge her significantly, hoping that the higher price would discourage her from renting the space. Maya asked David about the application process and requirements for renting commercial space. David told her that she would need to provide extensive financial documentation, including tax returns, bank statements, and business references. He also said that she would need to pay 6 months' rent in advance, plus a security deposit. Maya knew that other clients were typically asked for much less documentation and smaller deposits. When Maya mentioned that she had been teaching for 8 years and had excellent credit, David looked skeptical. He suggested that teaching was not really business experience and that landlords preferred tenants with corporate backgrounds. David told Maya that her application would probably be rejected because tutoring was not considered a stable business model. Maya watched David interact with another client who came in while she was there. The other client was a young white man who wanted to rent space for a photography studio. David spent over an hour with him, showing him the best available offices and explaining all the benefits of each location. David offered flexible payment terms and told the man that his application would be processed quickly. Maya listened as David helped the photographer understand the lease terms and offered to connect him with other business owners in the building who might become clients. David gave him promotional materials and business cards, encouraging him to call anytime with questions. The difference in treatment was so obvious that Maya felt sick watching her own employee discriminate so blatantly. As Maya prepared to leave, David handed her a business card, but told her that she should think carefully about whether she was really ready for the commitment of running a business. He suggested that she might want to wait a few more years until she had more experience and savings. Maya realized that David was actively discouraging her from pursuing her business dreams, just as her company was probably discouraging countless other potential entrepreneurs. Maya left the office feeling angry and heartbroken. Her commercial division was supposed to help small businesses grow and succeed, but instead it was crushing dreams and denying opportunities to people who deserved a chance. Maya thought about all the minority entrepreneurs who had probably been treated the same way by David and her other commercial agents. Maya decided to take her undercover investigation one step further by actually applying for an apartment as Maria Santos. She wanted to see how the application process worked and whether her staff treated applicants fairly during the rental approval process. Maya chose a modest 2-bedroom apartment that she could easily afford on her real income, but would be a stretch for a teacher's salary. Maya filled out the rental application honestly using her real financial information, but under Maria's fake identity. She had excellent credit, a substantial savings account, and steady employment history that should have made her an ideal tenant. Maya submitted all the required documents, including pay stubs, bank statements, and references, expecting the process to go smoothly since her qualifications were strong. But the application process immediately became a nightmare that opened Maya's eyes to systematic discrimination she had never imagined. The leasing agent, Sandra Martinez, kept claiming that Maya's paperwork was incomplete or missing even though Maya had submitted everything on the required list. Sandra asked Maya to resubmit the same documents multiple times, claiming they had been lost or were not clear enough to read. Sandra openly questioned whether Maya's income information was accurate, suggesting that teachers often exaggerate their salaries on applications. She demanded additional proof of income that was not required from other applicants, including a letter from the school principal and copies of Maya's last 3 tax returns. Sandra also insisted that Maya needed a co-signer even though her income was more than adequate to cover the rent. Maya watched other applicants go through the process while she waited in the office. White professionals with similar incomes were approved quickly with minimal documentation. Sandra processed their applications efficiently and welcomed them warmly to the building. But Maya was treated like a potential problem tenant who could not be trusted to pay rent on time or take care of the property. Sandra made insulting comments about Maya's profession, suggesting that teachers were not reliable tenants because they had summers off and unstable schedules. She questioned whether Maya really understood the commitment of a 12-month lease and whether she would be able to afford the rent during school holidays. Maya felt humiliated by Sandra's assumptions and prejudiced attitude. The discrimination became even more obvious when Sandra started asking Maya personal questions that were completely inappropriate and probably illegal. She wanted to know about Maya's family situation, asking detailed questions about her daughter's father and whether Maya received child support. Sandra also asked about Maya's future plans, wondering if she might get married or have more children, which could affect her housing needs. Maya realized that Sandra was looking for any excuse to reject her application or make the process so difficult that she would give up and look elsewhere. Sandra told Maya that the apartment she wanted might not be appropriate for a single mother because it was in a quiet building where children were not really welcome. She suggested that Maya might be more comfortable in a different complex that was more family-oriented. When Maya asked about the timeline for approval, Sandra was deliberately vague, saying that applications like Maya's often took several weeks to process because they required extra review. Maya knew that other applicants were typically approved within a few days. Sandra also mentioned that there were several other people interested in the same apartment, implying that Maya's application might not be competitive. Sandra repeatedly emphasized the importance of having perfect credit and stable employment, as if Maya's teaching job was somehow unreliable. She made Maya feel like she was asking for a favor rather than applying to rent an apartment that she could clearly afford. Sandra's attitude was so discouraging that Maya began to understand why many qualified applicants probably gave up during the process. The most shocking discovery came when Maya overheard Sandra talking to another leasing agent about applications they were processing. Sandra complained about having to deal with so many difficult applications from people who were not really qualified for their buildings. She made racist comments about minority applicants and joked about finding ways to reject applications without leaving obvious evidence of discrimination. Maya listened in horror as Sandra and her colleague discussed strategies for discouraging certain types of applicants. They talked about requiring extra documentation, making people wait longer for responses, and steering minority applicants toward less desirable properties. Sandra bragged about how she could make the process so unpleasant that unwanted applicants would choose to look elsewhere. Maya realized that her rental process was designed to exclude qualified minority applicants while appearing to follow fair housing laws. Her staff had created an entire system of barriers and delays that prevented equal access to housing. Maya felt sick thinking about how many families had been denied good homes because of this systematic discrimination. As Maya left the office that day, she knew that her investigation had uncovered problems that went far beyond individual prejudice. Her company was operating a system of institutional discrimination that violated everything she believed in. Maya understood that fixing these problems would require completely rebuilding her staff and processes from the ground up. On Maya's final day undercover, she was waiting in a small conference room for her last appointment when she heard voices approaching from the hallway. Maya quickly realized that her property managers were coming into the room for their weekly staff meeting, not knowing that anyone was already there. Maya quietly moved behind a large filing cabinet in the corner of the room where she could hear everything but remain hidden from view. The managers entered the room talking and laughing casually as they prepared for their meeting. Maya recognized the voices of her 5 senior managers, including Sandra Martinez, David Kim, Michael Rodriguez, and 2 others she had trusted completely to run her company professionally. Maya held her breath as she listened to the conversation that would change everything she thought she knew about her business. The managers began discussing their current clients, and Maya was horrified by the racist and discriminatory language they used to describe customers. They made cruel jokes about minority applicants, using offensive stereotypes and slurs that made Maya feel sick to her stomach. The managers laughed about how they had successfully discouraged certain types of people from renting in their buildings. Sandra bragged about her latest techniques for rejecting applications from people she considered undesirable. She explained how she had created additional requirements and delays that were not part of the official policy, but effectively prevented minorities from getting approved. Sandra described how she would claim that paperwork was missing or incomplete to frustrate applicants into giving up. David shared his strategies for overcharging minority customers for commercial properties, hoping that higher prices would discourage them from pursuing their business dreams. He talked about how he steered certain clients toward basement offices and less desirable spaces while reserving the best properties for white professionals. David seemed proud of his ability to discriminate without leaving obvious evidence. Michael discussed his approach to residential sales, explaining how he showed inferior properties to minority customers while saving the best apartments for white clients. He described how he made assumptions about what people could afford based on their appearance and background. Michael bragged about how he could waste minority customers' time by showing them properties they would never be able to rent. The managers talked about their monthly strategy for maintaining what they called the right tenant mix in their buildings. They discussed how they worked together to keep certain types of people out of their premium properties. The managers seemed to view discrimination as a business strategy rather than something morally wrong and legally prohibited. Maya listened in shock as her managers mocked her own diversity initiatives and equal opportunity policies. They called her efforts to promote fair housing Maya's feel-good nonsense and joked about how naive she was to think that discrimination was actually a problem. The managers had clearly been working together to undermine everything Maya believed her company represented. Sandra complained about having to attend diversity training sessions that Maya had required. She said the training was a waste of time because everyone already knew how to treat customers appropriately. Sandra and the others laughed about how they had figured out ways to discriminate without violating the letter of fair housing laws, even though they were clearly violating the spirit of those protections. The managers discussed specific customers they had rejected or discouraged, including some people Maya recognized from the complaints she had received. They talked about these customers as if they were problems to be solved, rather than human beings who deserved equal treatment. Maya realized that her managers viewed discrimination as part of their job responsibilities. David mentioned how easy it was to fool Maya because she spent most of her time focusing on business expansion rather than day-to-day operations. The managers agreed that Maya was too trusting and did not really understand what was happening in her own company. They seemed confident that their discriminatory practices would never be discovered or challenged. The most devastating moment came when Sandra suggested that they needed to be more careful about their methods because fair housing complaints were increasing. But instead of suggesting that they stop discriminating, Sandra recommended that they find better ways to hide their discriminatory practices. The other managers agreed and began discussing new techniques for excluding minority customers. Maya felt physically sick listening to her trusted employees reveal their true attitudes about the customers they were supposed to serve. She realized that these managers had been systematically violating fair housing laws and destroying people's dreams, while she had been completely unaware of their actions. Maya understood that her company had become exactly the kind of discriminatory business that she had always opposed. As the meeting continued, Maya heard enough evidence to confirm her worst fears about her company. Her managers were not just individual bad employees, but rather a coordinated group working together to maintain systematic discrimination. Maya knew that she had to take immediate action to stop this behavior and rebuild her company with people who shared her values of equality and respect. Maya quietly left the conference room while the managers continued their meeting. She felt angry, heartbroken, and determined to make things right. Maya knew that confronting this level of systematic discrimination would require firing her entire management team and starting over with new leadership committed to treating all customers fairly and professionally. Maya spent that entire night in her office unable to sleep or think about anything except what she had discovered during her week undercover. She sat at her desk surrounded by files, applications, and customer complaints that now made perfect sense in light of what she had witnessed. Maya felt like she was seeing her own company for the first time, and the reality was devastating. Maya pulled out rental records from the past 2 years and began analyzing them with new understanding. She looked at approval rates for different types of applicants and saw clear patterns of discrimination that she had somehow missed before. Minority applicants were rejected at much higher rates than white applicants, even when their qualifications were similar or better. The statistics painted a picture of systematic exclusion that made Maya feel ashamed and angry. She reviewed customer complaints that had been dismissed or explained away by her managers. Maya now understood that these complaints were not isolated incidents, but rather evidence of widespread discriminatory practices. Customers had been trying to tell her about problems in her company, but her managers had convinced her that these were just unreasonable complainers or misunderstandings. Maya looked at sales data and realized that her company was losing money because of discrimination. By excluding qualified minority customers, her managers were reducing the pool of potential tenants and buyers. Maya calculated that her company had probably lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue because her staff was turning away good customers based on prejudice rather than qualifications. Maya thought about all the dreams her company had crushed and all the families who had been denied good housing because of her employees' behavior. She imagined children who had to attend worse schools because their parents were steered away from better neighborhoods. Maya thought about small business owners who had given up on their dreams because her commercial agents had discouraged them from pursuing office space. The more Maya analyzed the situation, the more she realized that the discrimination was not just individual prejudice, but an organized system created and maintained by her management team. Her managers had developed specific strategies and techniques for excluding minority customers while maintaining plausible deniability. They had corrupted her company's culture and turned it into something that violated everything she believed in. Maya remembered her own experiences as a young entrepreneur trying to get started in real estate. She recalled how some agents had treated her poorly because she was young, black, and did not have much money. Maya had promised herself that her company would be different and that everyone who came to her would be treated with dignity and respect. But now she realized that her company had become exactly what she had always opposed. Maya spent hours thinking about her options and the consequences of different decisions. She could try to retrain her managers and give them another chance, but she knew that their attitudes and behaviors were too deeply ingrained to change easily. Maya realized that the discrimination was not just a few bad decisions, but rather a fundamental part of how her managers viewed their jobs and customers. Maya considered the legal implications of what she had discovered. Her company was clearly violating fair housing laws and could face serious lawsuits and penalties if the discrimination continued. But more importantly, Maya knew that continuing to allow this behavior would mean betraying her own values and harming more innocent people who deserved better treatment. Maya made the most difficult decision of her business career. She would fire her entire management team and start over with new leadership committed to equality and professional service. Maya knew this would be expensive and disruptive, but she also knew it was the only way to create the kind of company she had always intended to build. Maya spent the rest of the night preparing termination letters and planning how to rebuild her company. She researched fair housing laws and best practices for creating inclusive business cultures. Maya contacted employment agencies and began thinking about what qualities she would look for in new managers who could help her create a truly professional and ethical real estate company. As dawn approached, Maya felt emotionally drained, but also determined to make things right. She knew that rebuilding her company would be challenging and expensive, but she also knew that her success would be meaningless if it came at the expense of other people's dignity and opportunities. Maya was ready to do whatever it took to transform her business into something she could be truly proud of. Maya looked out her office window at the sunrise and thought about the future she wanted to create. She imagined a company where every customer would be treated with respect, regardless of their race, income, or background. Maya envisioned helping families find good homes and supporting entrepreneurs in building successful businesses. She was ready to make that vision a reality, no matter what it cost her. The next morning, Maya walked into her office building as herself for the first time in a week. She wore her usual professional business suit and carried herself with the confidence of someone who owned the company. But inside, Maya felt nervous and determined as she prepared for the most important meeting of her career. She had called an emergency all-staff meeting and every employee was required to attend. Maya arrived early and set up the main conference room, with chairs arranged so that everyone could see her clearly. She placed a folder of evidence on the table, including recordings she had legally made during her undercover investigation and documentation of discriminatory practices she had discovered. Maya took a deep breath and prepared to confront the truth about what her company had become. At 9 o'clock sharp, Maya's 50 employees filed into the conference room looking curious and slightly concerned about the unusual meeting. The managers she had overheard the day before looked confident and relaxed, having no idea that their secret conversation had been discovered. Maya watched their faces as they settled into their seats, completely unaware that their careers were about to end. Maya stood before her staff and began by thanking them for their hard work and dedication over the years. She spoke about how proud she had been to build Richardson Properties into one of the most successful real estate companies in the city. But then Maya's tone became serious as she began to address the customer complaints that had been troubling her for months. Maya explained that she had been receiving numerous complaints about unprofessional behavior and discriminatory treatment from customers who felt unwelcome and disrespected. She watched as some of her managers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, probably wondering how much she actually knew about their practices. Maya could see worry beginning to appear on their faces as they realized this meeting was more serious than they had expected. Then Maya revealed the truth that changed everything. She announced that she had spent the entire previous week working undercover in her own company, posing as Maria Santos, a customer looking for housing and office space. The room fell completely silent as the shocking revelation hit her employees. Maya could see panic in the eyes of the managers who had treated her so poorly without knowing who she really was. Maya methodically described what she had witnessed during her undercover investigation. She talked about the rude treatment at the reception desk, the discriminatory behavior of her agents, and the systematic exclusion of minority customers from good properties. Maya described how she had been overcharged, lied to, and discouraged from pursuing her housing and business goals by her own employees. Maya played audio recordings of some of the interactions she had experienced, including conversations where agents made racist assumptions and treated her unprofessionally. She also played portions of the management meeting where her senior staff had discussed their discriminatory practices and mocked her diversity initiatives. The room was completely silent as employees heard their own voices revealing their true attitudes about customers. Maya announced that effective immediately, she was terminating every manager who had participated in discriminatory practices. She called out Sandra Martinez, David Kim, Michael Rodriguez, and several other senior employees by name and told them that their employment was ended immediately. Maya explained that discrimination and unprofessional behavior had no place in her company, and that these employees had violated both company policy and federal fair housing laws. Some of the fired employees tried to defend themselves, claiming that they were just following standard business practices or that Maya was overreacting to isolated incidents. But Maya was firm in her decision, explaining that what she had witnessed was not isolated, but rather part of a systematic pattern of discrimination that had been poisoning her company for years. Maya told the remaining employees that Richardson Properties would be completely rebuilt from the ground up with new leadership committed to treating every customer with dignity and respect. She announced that she would be hiring new managers who shared her values of equality and professionalism. Maya also established new policies requiring extensive fair housing training and regular monitoring to ensure that discrimination would never again be tolerated.